Finally, a horror movie that acknowledges everybody's biggest outdoor fear: getting a tick. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2019 folk horror film, Midsommar. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, ranked lists, and trailer reactions. All of my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Midsommar stars Florence Pugh, Jack Reynor, and William Jackson Harper, and was directed by Ari Aster in his sophomore outing. It tells the story of Danny, played by Florence Pugh, as she travels to Sweden with her boyfriend and a group of his friends to attend the Midsummer Solstice Festival of a small isolated community. The idealistic community is not what it seems, however, and the trip soon turns into something far more dark and sinister. Midsommar is not your typical horror movie. Much like Ari Aster's directorial debut last summer, this is a film that has a lot to unpack. It actually has a deceptively simple plot, but that superficial simplicity covers a much more complex tale. At its surface, it's a film about a Swedish community's cult-like celebration of midsummer, the summer solstice. But as we learn throughout this movie, this community is driven by the cyclical nature of life, of birth, death, and rebirth, of the seasons. Not unlike other cultures, they relate the seasons to various life stages. Spring's the time of birth, winter's the time of death. But this particular community is more precise than that. They equate very specific age ranges to these seasons. And the season with the most relevancy here is, unsurprisingly, summer. For this community, the summer of someone's life is between the ages of 18 and 36. This is that transition period from childhood to full-fledged, self-sustaining adulthood. And this story focuses on a group of grad students in their late 20s, symbolically midsummer in their lives. This movie explores both those literal and symbolic takes on midsummer. Literal is the Midsummer Festival and all of the ritualistic horror it entails. This is where the gruesome outward horror of the film lies. Horror in the more classic sense of the word. But the underlying symbolic midsummer is just as horrific, just in a different way. It's the guttural, visceral horror of growing up, the loss and grief that comes with aging, and that comes from interactions with other people. At its core, Midsommar is a darkly relatable relationship drama. It focuses on a toxic, crumbling relationship, a very one-sided relationship. Danny's the one making all of the effort, as Christian doesn't even attempt to hide his disinterest in their relationship anymore. He's distant, dismissive, and has a way of turning situations around so that in her desperate attempts to salvage the relationship, Danny ends up accepting blame and apologizing for things she shouldn't be apologizing for. The symbolism in this film runs deep. Certainly far deeper than I can fully comprehend. There's so much attention to detail, especially with the production design. The disturbing yet frequently mesmerizing art that appears throughout the film foreshadows both the plot and thematic messages of the movie. The costumes and the way they're used to distinguish or integrate certain characters, the frequent motif of mirrors, even the symbols and runes seen all around the community have meaning. Some of it I think I get, some of it I could venture hypotheses about, and some of it has definitely gone over my head. But it largely mixes the cyclical qualities of nature with themes of growing up, moving on, and finding solidarity. The symbolism and underlying themes of this film are fascinating, but I do think the focus on them results in an unnecessarily long and, at times, self-indulgent movie. Like I said before, the plot of this film is actually very simple and straightforward. A lot of weird stuff happens, but the main story beats are extremely predictable. I don't mean that in a bad way. If anything, constantly having a pretty good idea of where things were headed created this nagging sense of dread. The actual events were gruesome, or satisfying, disturbing, or cathartic, but the knowing build-up to them created a lot of atmospheric tension. That being said, this movie did not have to be 2.5 hours long. Even though I was very interested throughout, and I truly do appreciate the cinematic crafting of the whole, there were quite a few moments, especially in the third act, that felt very self indulgent. Midsummer is bound to be a polarizing, divisive film, even more so than Hereditary was. Despite its extremely bright, colorful setting, this is a very thematically dark movie. It's unsettling and frequently disturbing, yet it still has moments of humor. I think this movie shows even more confidence on the part of director Ari Aster. Hereditary was weird, dark, disturbing, and layered, but it felt more like a classic horror movie than this one does. Although I don't know what else you could classify it as, I kinda hesitate to call Midsummer a horror movie. It almost feels like a dark drama with very horrific moments. There's a lot of shocking imagery in this film. Whereas we got brief flashes of disturbing shots or gore in Hereditary, moments like those are really lingered on in this movie, and they're graphic. I think some people will find these moments of gore or ritualistic activity too much. There were only 6 other people in my showing of this movie, but even with so few people, there were still 2 walkouts. This is definitely not a movie for everybody. Although I like Hereditary more, and even though the moral of this film can be comedically, if reductively, summarized as be good to your significant other and don't do drugs, this is still a very effective film. Whether or not you actually like the movie, it will make you think. It'll make you want to discuss it with somebody, and it'll stick with you. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 is how interesting this film is. That might sound overly simple and broad for such a thematically dense movie, but I found myself really wrapped up in this film. Although fairly predictable, the actual plot was very interesting in that familiar mystery horror kind of way. But then you had the symbolism and underlying themes that added another few layers of intrigue to the story. And on top of all that, this was a sensorially striking movie. The colors were bright and vibrant, the camera movement, angles, and transitions were unique and at times unsettling. The sound design and score effectively matched the visuals and tone. The whole thing was disturbing, beautiful, and interesting all at once. Pro number 2 is Florence Pugh's performance as Danny. The other characters were fine, but Danny was clearly our main character. The traumas and grief she experiences over the course of this film are both relatable and wild, and the character development, realizations, and decisions we see from her are compelling. Some of her choices are questionable or frustrating, but can still be logically explained by the character setup we're provided with. No other characters go through such a diverse set of emotional extremes, and Pugh's performance captures it all fantastically. As far as cons go, my biggest issue with this film is its self-indulgence. It doesn't significantly hamper the movie, but it does detract from it a bit. I get that the themes are important, and that Astor's stylistic choices make the film uniquely his, but this movie takes a very simple plot and stretches it out to 2.5 hours. Even with most of the themes intact, I think this story could have been told in 2 hours, maybe even 90 minutes. I have nothing against long movies, but this film did have a lot of what I'll call art house padding. Some scenes, like the dancing or basically any of the numerous drug scenes, dragged on far longer than necessary, and other scenes could have been cut entirely without losing any of the plot or thematic impact. At times, the movie felt like it was trying to be shocking just to say it was shocking. Some moments worked for the story, but others lingered longer than necessary. I'm gonna give Midsummer 3.5 out of 5 paws. It's both a simple yet dense movie at the same time, and I think I have a good sense of my general feeling about the film, but not necessarily my full comprehension of it. Despite my issues with it, I did enjoy it, and perhaps more importantly, I can't stop thinking about it. I would recommend Midsummer to fans of indie horror. This is not your typical horror movie. It's weird, it's disturbing, it's artsy, it's even more offbeat and atypical than Hereditary was. I can't say that the trailer was misleading exactly, but this movie is far more about the underlying themes and the imagery than it is about its plot. So you'll likely want to adjust your expectations accordingly if you were going in expecting a straight up horror movie. If you liked Midsummer, I obviously have to recommend Ari Aster's first film, Hereditary. It's another thematically dark and shocking tale of grief and loss, but it's stylistically dark too, with much more of a classic horror vibe. Midsummer might be scary if you're planning a trip to Sweden anytime soon, but Hereditary is scary anywhere. I've also got to recommend the fairly obvious Wicker Man. The setup and story nuances are different, but both films feature an outsider being pulled into shocking and disturbing pagan rituals. I would also recommend The Babadook. It's another dark drama about grief wrapped in a veneer of horror. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Midsummer? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite horror movie that really isn't actually about the horror? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.